I mean, when I think back to it, like I'm literally like pants down my ankles, like talking to my little sister. I'm crying. I lift my head up and I like go, I can't do it. And she said, just try and get in the car. That's the first step. And I'm like, okay, I'll try and get in the car. Because it was actually, I don't know if she did it on, necessarily thought it through and did it on purpose, but it was genius. Because getting in the car wasn't asking me to finish it. It wasn't even asking me to start. It was just like, can you get in the car? I then get in the car. My wife and her sister then, so sister's driving us. My wife, literally, she gets in the car. She's like, do you want your shoes, Dave?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Ben Pegna, and today we got an unbelievable guest. And that's why I actually need to read this to you guys. Imagine this. You're in the middle of your professional rugby career, playing at a high level for over a decade. Then one moment changes everything. A traumatic brain injury, a seizure, and suddenly the game is taken away from you. Our guest today lived that reality. But instead of letting it define him, he found a new path, not just for himself, but for countless athletes and teams looking to optimize their performance, managing stress, pressure of the game, and push past that limit. He played 316 games for his club, scored 102 tries, which is still a record, helping Nottingham Rugby earn promotion. He ran a 216-kilometer ultramarathon, only breathing through his nose, pushing human endurance to new limits. He's now a breath coach, helping elite athletes and teams unlock their hidden potential through power of breath. Today, we're deep diving into the role of breath in performance, stress management, and recovery. He's none other than Jaco, Dave Jackson. Welcome, brother. Good to have you.
I've got goosebumps. I was like, I'm looking forward to meeting that guy. Who's that guy? It's weird hearing stuff said about yourself. And it brings
How you doing, man? Good to see you. Good to meet you. Oh, yes. Awesome.
I guess the story brings back a mixture of emotions, which I'm not there anymore. You know, I'm in a good place. I'm looking out of my window. The sun is shining in beautiful Snowdonia. I can see the sea, but it's bringing back memory back and feel it in my body almost. You know, it was a long time ago. So, but obviously we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Nah, we're going to talk about that, man. Awesome. We're super excited. I'm super pumped, man. I'm just got ready and energized. Ben, how you doing, my man? You good?
Yeah,
Don't
me too.
Speak a lot these days anymore.
I'm good, G. Yeah, I'm really good. Me too. Yeah, and it's Ben. That your intros are good, man.
Oh man, I typed it out, man. I had to do the work.
Yeah, anyway. It's good. It's really good. I'm looking forward to having a chat
kick
with
off our
JACKO,
podcast, JACKO. All right. I'm okay if I call you JACKO. No, we're not friends yet. We'll be friends after this podcast.
Wait. The rugby family, we're friends, mate. Don't you worry about that, China.
So, right, man, what is the one lesson from the game that you have learned in your career that you can share with young rugby players aspiring to play at the highest level and coaches that want to help their team level up their performance?
Yeah, I think I've had, I played, obviously, rugby for a long time, since I was flipping 6 years old until 31. I coached rugby a bit after that as well. And I think one of the biggest lesson I think I've learned that's an amalgamation of when I was playing, when I was forced to retire, when I've coached, and then like what I've learned now is that I realized that I was constantly wrestling whilst playing with this judgment week by week from external factors, coaches mainly, am I going to get picked this week, the crowd, etc., on my performance. And I took that as my identity, and that made me very fearful of failure, which I found in retrospect, I knew I was wrestling with that, but I couldn't fully articulate it like that. But looking back on it now, I know that I always felt like I wanted to take some like shackles off. Like there were some things like I was never really like fully in that flow. There's always something limiting, and what I've learned through how my career ended, all the many failures that I've had since then, and I think some of it's a little bit as you get older, but I'm not afraid of failure now like I was before. It's just part of it. It's part of a process, and that process, it's a little easier now. That process now is about how I learn, and failure being part of that learning process to get better at whatever it is I want to do. Because you're not playing in front of a crowd every week, and one or two, older players that are now coaches are basically in charge of whether you're going to be happy that you're playing at the weekend. That's just how selection works. Because I don't have that now in life. Like, that's a little bit easier. I'd like to think if I went back to playing now, I'd be better able to cope mentally with that. Some of the breathing that I've learned is obviously like very, very helpful for regulating your nervous system, regulating your mental state and emotions, as well as the physical performances. So apologies, that's not like a super concise answer. But if I was to summarize, it's like, I used to be so afraid of failure. It was like crippling. Whereas now I look at failure as part of a process to actually learning and getting better.
I totally agree. We definitely resonate with you on that. To fear of failure. We've all experienced that in our careers, Ben, myself, and even us launching this podcast. We were like procrastinating at a stage, and it was like, are we like credible to do this podcast, even though we both played professionally? And there was also that fear of failure in the sense of people might judge us. And then at some stage you say, you know what, stuff it. We don't give a shit. All right. We're going to live and be authentic selves, share our passion, share our experience with the audience. And that's what we want to do. But my man, there's some great stories that you can share with us. But I want you to take us back to that moment when you experience that traumatic brain injury, because we spoke to Anthony Watson as well recently, whose career came to abrupt end, due to injury, and that's not easy. Tell us more about that moment you got injured. What exactly happened?
Well, one of the I guess the lucky things is that I don't remember anything from 2 weeks of that period in my life, which I think is a blessing and a bit of a godsend, because having a seizure and a fit on the field, like, I don't think you really want to remember that. But what I've been told was that we were playing touch. We were warming up in training. It was like a Tuesday afternoon or something. And two of us on the same team were trying to catch the ball. I ran it. Phil Eggleshaw was like a lot taller than me, back rower. His shoulder hit me in the jaw, and my mate said, it was literally funny. We were literally about to burst out laughing because it was just messing about and it was just funny. But when I hit the deck, I started having a seizure, and lads, one of my mates, Shawsey, put me in the recovery position, made sure I didn't swallow my tongue, lift the chin to open the airway, which is an interesting point that we forget about in terms of breathing. But basically put me in the recovery position, called the physio over. The only thing I remember is waking up you're not asleep, are you? But my first memory is being in hospital. I look down at my feet and I've got my rugby boots on. And it just seemed a bit odd. And I looked to my left and there was like the physio. He'd not been physio with us for that long, but I obviously could remember and knew as well. I was a bit like, I know what's happened. I've been knocked out, haven't I? And he goes, yes. Because I'd obviously asked him that a million times. And then I said to him, I've asked you that about 1,000 times, haven't I? And he was like, yes. So I'd been, that had happened to me like a number of times throughout my career. What was happening, unbeknown to me, when I look back on it now, it's very clear. And when I eventually saw the specialist 6 months later, there was an accumulative buildup of all the other concussions that I had, and it was taking less to knock me out, and it was getting worse each time. My record actually shows that very clearly, but just at the time, I had no idea that I was putting myself in that type of risk. The seizure was a sign of a small bleed that an MRI showed later. It took about 3 months for me to get that for various. I was trying to get back to playing initially, and the neurosurgeon or specialist that I saw, made it very, very clear that the next one could be fatal to me. That's what her sort of words were. But it was up to me whether I wanted to try to carry on playing or not. But I couldn't. I couldn't go for a run without all of my symptoms coming back. So it was a no-brainer. Let's say that you're not gonna risk that. But that was a difficult I should have. One of the things I learned from my brain injury was like, this is a really useful like sort of life lesson that I'd learned through the injury. Talking about fear of failure was what we spoke of before, sort of linked to it. I very much didn't believe in like quitting. Like quitting was sort of associated with failure. So what sort of, I guess, have been drummed into me, which is a really good thing. Like, don't quit on things. Like that's a good like philosophy to have. If we quit on stuff too easily, like we don't get anywhere. But there's a time and a place for everything. And I put me and my wife through months and months and months and months of like very difficult time, because I didn't just early doors just go, look, guys, I am flipping done. This is not right. I can tell I'm not right. I waited till I got an MRI scan showing a bleed on the brain. The specialist telling me like you might die to get me to stop. She took that. It was still my decision, but she very much took that decision out of my hands, and I was very grateful for that. She was really worried. She was like saying, look, you got to stop playing. Worried that, knows that's my career and how I earn money, like pay the mortgage and and it's coming to Christmas. And I was just like, took this huge sigh of relief and was basically like, thank you. Because I needed someone to tell me it's okay to quit this thing. And again, what that lesson in that is like, there is a time and a place where the path that you're on is not the right path. Don't wait till you've been smacked on the head. Like, so I'm very grateful now. It's like the best thing that happened in my life was the worst thing that happened in my life. It changed my direction. I would not be here today doing what I do today, knowing what I know today, being helped the people that need the help that I'm getting to work with, if that hadn't have happened. But at the time, when you're in that dark place, if you've been crying your eyes out in Tesco because you can't decide what yogurts you're going to eat, because that load on your brain is too difficult a decision, it don't feel like it's the right thing. It feels like the world's against you, but it might not be. It's just part of the path. Yeah.
Wow.
Ben, my man.
Sorry.
Yeah, Jaco was amazing. The funny thing actually just got me reflecting on something then. I think when we speak to people in rugby, and we've been around it our whole lives, all of us, it's the nature of the beast, of the competitor, I think, what you just described. And I often think that when I hear journalists ask questions at press conferences, and they sort of don't put themselves in the shoe of the person they're asking the question of. They're asking, and what you sort of described, you're not going to take a backward step on the field. You're not going to take it. You're going to leave no stone unturned when you're training, when you're preparing to play. So the thought of just giving it away in a way, or just saying, okay, well, I'm done with this, I'll move on to the next thing, is that probably didn't even cross your mind, did it?
Well, but I think this is where there is a distinction. When I'm in like one of the things I pride in, you asked the people that I played with, like I wasn't the most skillful player, but I will try. I'm a tryhard, and like if you put me in a fitness test, like I'm not giving up, and I'm beating you. And in a fitness test, not giving up when you're physically primed and able to do the thing you do, and using your mental ability to push through some like barriers, is a good thing, let's say. But if you ask me, during that recovery period of my brain injury, if you'd have said to me, Jacko, be honest, tell me what's going on inside, and if I felt comfortable enough to actually be honest with you, I'd have said, Ben, I'm fucking petrified that they're going to put me back on the pitch. That's what I'd have said to you. So I knew, there was no doubt in my mind I needed to stop, but I just wasn't brave enough to make that decision. And it's lucky that I actually had some scarring on my brain that showed, like, look, you're done.
Yeah. And I guess that mindset then, and that ability to do that physical endurance and that resilience and that perseverance, when you go and then run ultra marathons and doing incredible events, and you go and run up mountains and things like that, that's good for that then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good for that. And it took me a long time. I retired I had my brain injury in 2013. The ultra marathon you're talking about, I think I did in 2022. Like it took me a long time to build up the both physical and mental resilience. I still had in the background, like in my mind, the ability to like go to dark places and come out the back of it, but I didn't have the nervous system regulation to deal with that, and the physical capabilities to be able to deal with that. One of the things with concussions and brain injuries is that all of those like symptoms that you're feeling that can range from feeling very sick to cognitive issues to vestibular, like balance, eye issues, all host of things are all like inflammation of the brain and a disruption to the nervous system. So fatigue and poor sleep. And you're basically in like a chronic state of fight or flight. So anything in that state is more difficult, more challenging.
Okay. And is that something you have to manage day to day now still? Or is that just an ongoing?
So that's something that the breathing, hands down. Your breathing is a reflection of your nervous system. Your breathing is interwoven into your nervous system. When we measure things like HRV that people use, heart rate variability, players now will use for like recovery markers. Your heart rate variability, like the changes in variation of your heartbeat, is created by the relationship between your breathing, your lungs, and your heart. So when someone's measuring HRV, like you're measuring breathing, just indirectly. After a brain injury and concussions, HRV will be lower. Your symptoms can come back. Your symptoms not come back. Your symptoms can resolve, or let's say from all the literature on this, the symptoms are the thing that will come back to normal first, which is great. You're going to feel better. Good. But things like your heart rate variability and any dysregulation that may have happened to your breathing patterns, because the respiratory centers in the brainstem are like right in the middle of your brain, that can take a little bit longer sometimes. Hence why someone like me that had this like symptoms are better, go and play again, get knocked out again, oh, it's a bit worse this time. Because actually I hadn't fully recovered. The same way if you go and say you pull your hamstring, you go back a bit too early, what do you do? Pull your hamstring again. It's a little more obvious when your hamstring's ready to go, whereas my concussion symptoms have resolved. I'm able to go back play again because at the moment our protocols for concussion are very much based on symptoms.
Jaco,
100%.
Wow, that I think that must have been tough, navigating that time after you decided, or after the decision was made for you to stop playing. And thanks for sharing that with us. I think it's so important for our audience to hear that, because we live in a world we used to live in a world where showing vulnerability would be seen as a weakness, and we felt that would be judged. But today, gratefully, we are living in a space where you can say, I'm not good, I'm not feeling well. And I just want you to give us some insights, because obviously, you've achieved some great things. You've been working with elite athletes. You've worked with guys like Tom Willis. You've been working with a lot of rugby league players and great teams. But that period, that transition period, that must have been intense. You were a rugby player. You were probably one of the legends of your team, Nottingham, scoring 102 tries, man. That's kind of like, I think 95 more than what I scored in my career. So that's impressive. And you can clearly see like the time you've spent there, you were committed to the club. But I can imagine after having that career, 13 years in professional rugby, starting in the year 2000, and then, all right, what's next? I know you were passionate about strength and conditioning, but how did you navigate that time, like after your TBI? Because I imagine it wasn't, you were speaking about, you had blurred vision, you had headaches, and I read something as well. There were times you were forced to sleep in the afternoon, 2 to 3 hours, just because you were that tired. So how did you navigate that time and getting back to where you are basically now?
So a great question, and it's difficult. So initially, I was trying to get back to playing. That was like that was the route that I thought, this has happened before. We'll get over it. So as the weeks turned into months, those questions start to come back, and it's like, I can't remember exactly how long. After a certain period, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month, I can't remember exactly. My wife takes me back to A&E because she is like, look at this guy. Like, he is not right. That is not my husband. Like, we just got married in the summer. She's like, this isn't the same guy. Like, and they looked at my CT scan they had before and said, oh, it's just a bit of concussion. Like, he'll be fine. So we were sort of like pushing on doors and didn't really feel like we were getting much help. And the advice was rest. You'll get better eventually, hopefully. That was basically it. And like, I liken it to during COVID, like during COVID, everyone was going, it was a difficult time for everyone, like particularly mentally. It was like, God, what's going on? Because we didn't really know what was going on during COVID. We didn't know what was going on. And most importantly, we didn't know when it was going to end. We hoped it would end, but we were like, is this us for the rest of our life? We have to be in lockdown. And it was like that. It was like, I don't know what's going on and I don't know when it's going to end. And, as an example, trying to do a bit of hoovering and then having to go to bed because you're that fucked afterwards. Like it was just, anyway, so it was a very difficult time. It gets to the point after a few months where, I don't know, it was maybe after about 6 months where it's then a case of like, okay, you are retiring, that you've had your scan now that showed a scar on the brain from the bleed and you're done. That was then actually a huge sigh of relief and turning point because it was like, okay, that's done. I was scared of going back on the pitch. I'm actually now glad that it's done. What's the rest of life about? It was like, I turned, once I'd gone through all the difficult, hard stuff, like the, not being able to function, like the depression, all of that black, dark period for 6 months, when you come out the back of it, whilst being told, what coincided with me, whilst being told, right, you're done, you need to retire, I was gradually starting to feel a little bit better. Over the next 6 months, I get back on my feet and it's like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? One of the things about a sport like rugby, there's not many sports where you're not going to have another career. Golf and snooker are probably your two ones that you don't need another career because you can do that for wherever. I wish I took up snooker. It'd be great. So you're going to have a career. I'd done a teacher training degree. I'd done an engineering degree at university at Loughborough. So I had like a master's. I could have stepped into one of those like jobs, but it felt like a waste of everything I'd learned the last 13 years of playing professional. I wanted to give something back and I wanted to use some of the things that I felt like I'd learned from the game. And so that's why I basically made a list of like what do I want out of like a job and career and what don't I want. And that led me into strength and conditioning, which eventually led me into, I'm still a strength and conditioning coach now. I guess the niche is in like the performance and conditioning side with breathing and also how that can help with the recovery side of it as well. Because one thing we're very good at in rugby is training really, really hard, but not recovering really, really hard. Or, if I'm going to make you train harder, I got to give you the recovery tools, but we don't do that.
Jacko, so much. I love, there's loads of lot to explore. Just one quick question. Did you grieve like the end of your playing?
Not really, because I think it's one of those things where I felt lucky in that, like, so one of the I had that brain injury where the specialist has said, like, you could have died. Like, so I'm feeling lucky to be here anyway. I then was my recovery was starting to improve. So I'm like feeling very grateful that I'm actually starting to recover. One of the things that I had to, in order for me to have my MRI scan, I remember signing this piece of paper saying, checking that you'd not had any, you haven't got any metal plates in your head, because you can't have an MRI scan otherwise. And about 3 years, I can't remember exactly, it's about 3 years before, I had a triple fracture of my eye socket in the second half of a game away at Worcester, where ironically my mum thought I died. But that was the second concussion I received in that game, because I got knocked out in the first half.
Wow.
But never went off. And two impacts like that are very dangerous for double impact syndrome, is like a higher risk of death. Now, because I had to have my face reset on my record, if you look at my hospital record, went to hospital, had his face reset, was supposed to have a metal plate put in, but didn't need to. Was going into operation to have a metal plate put in. When I came back round, the surgeon was like, I pulled it out, checked it was rock solid, it didn't need the plate. So happy. At the time, I was a bit disappointed because I was looking forward to going through the beepers at the airports and setting them off, But that allowed me to be able to actually have my MRI scan. But then also, interestingly, on my hospital record, there is no recognition that there was not just one brain injury, that there was 2 concussions in that game. Because all that's on my record is triple eye fracture or triple fracture of my eye socket and jaw, and that needs to be reset. So it was sort of unknowingly, and this hopefully doesn't sound criticised, I'm just telling you the facts of what happened. We weren't aware, medical staff and me, that I was on a downward trajectory, because some of these things were missed. So I'm not grieving playing. I was like, just so grateful was still alive.
Yeah, sure. And then fast forward. So I know that was quite a while back, and you mentioned that was, I think, 2013. So then fast forward to what's your average day look like today? You as G mentioned, you're working with some really good players across sports, actually, different athletes, helping them in different ways. You've just, I think you've written a book as well, haven't you? So from where you were and what you've just been describing to, it sounds like an amazing, transition and turnaround story.
Yeah. I guess life is fairly is very different now, but it's even different to it was a few years ago. Just under 2 years ago, we moved to Snowdonia in North Wales. My sister lives over there, and actually, mum and dad are from the area, and we just love the mountains. And here we've got the sea and the mountains. Like, be a mountain behind us, the sea there. I'd very got into my trail running by this point. And then the coaching that I'm doing, some of the stuff we can do online over Zoom, etc. And then in-person sessions that I do, they're not done. You don't need me there every week or 2 or 3 times a week. It's not like back in the day when I was doing PT or S&C with athletes where, you train them 3 times a week. So I only need to see guys once a month or once every 2 months, or I work with female athletes as well, guys or girls. I don't have to see them all the time. So it means I can be a little bit out of it in my little oasis in Snowdonia. And an average day can look like, just last week handed in first draft of a book, obviously on breathing, the exact details of it I'm not allowed to say yet, for Bloomsbury Publishers. So again, a huge sigh of relief once I got that done in on Friday. We're not there yet because it's got to go through some rounds of editing and all that sort of stuff, but the bulk of the work is done. But there's coaching, there's my own training, there's exploring how breathing can help with movement, performance, recovery, and there's going out and just running a marathon just for the love of it.
Jaco, I've watched some of your posts on social media and some of the stuff you share. It's unbelievable. But what intrigues me is, you knew what you wanted to do. You wanted to stay in strength and conditioning. But how did you get into breathwork? Because I'll be honest with you, like I said before, when I was playing, I wasn't a big fan of breathwork. I thought it was weird.
Yeah.
And I remember even coming to France when I saw the players, all the teams that would huddle up and do 3 breaths, breathe in, breathe out. I'm like, what bullshit is this? This looks stupid.
Yeah.
And then a little later, I read that, the book of Kerry Evans, Perform Under Pressure, was a way just to get back to your blue brain, your blue mindset, calm down, recover. But how did you, so obviously now as a coach, I believe in breathwork. I do my best to do it on a daily basis. I'm not a specialist. I'm still learning. But I have found in terms of managing the mental load as a coach and just life in general, it's so beneficial. But how did you get started with breathwork, and where you realized, what, I'm passionate about this and this could actually put me on a new journey?
Yeah. Great question. And I was the same. I was super skeptical. I was like, what's this stuff? But again, it's where I come back to and be thankful for my brain injury, because it was the fact that, I'm still in that category of person where the effects of all of those concussions may play out later in life, early onset dementia, cognitive issues, that type of stuff. So brain health has always been something that's really important post that injury for me and my wife, because obviously whatever happens to me is affecting her. So initially looking at things like nutrition, that's very much my wife's specialty, let's say. And those sort of holistic or more holistic health practices that can help. And I came across some research that was linking brain injuries with disruption to the respiratory center, and therefore disruption in the rate and rhythm of your breathing, your sensitivity to carbon dioxide, and dysregulation of the nervous system. And I was like, oh, well, I've had a lot of brain injuries. I wonder, am I bad at breathing because of that? And so then, being very skeptical, but also being uneducated in it, I was like, how do you know if you're good or bad at breathing? Because you're like, I'm doing it. And I was one of the fittest in the team all the time, like never had a problem with my breathing. I came across Patrick McEwen's work with the Oxygen Vantage, and I did a couple of the simple assessments within that. And one of the scores I come out as a severe asthmatic, relative to, and I'm like, well, that's weird because I've never had asthma, and I don't even think I've got a problem with my breathing. And that's one of the problems with a dysregulated nervous system and poor breathing habits that have been ingrained. They're your new norm, so it feels normal to you. So it goes under the radar. You've got no idea that you're bad at breathing. This is actually where running came into it for me. Go out on a run and you find out immediately what your breathing's like, because your breathing ramps up. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't control it. I'm breathing out my mouth and this feels terrible. I feel really unfit and I can't control my breathing. So I actually started running. I was running to work on my breathing, because at rest it was a little bit like hidden. And the thing that really changed it for me from a performance perspective was I knocked a minute off my 5K time in 4 weeks. I went from like 2020 down to 1917 by just trying to regulate, not nasal or mouth, like no detail, just trying to regulate the depth and size of my breath whilst doing a park run. And the two things were astonishing within that. One, I knocked off a minute, or just over a minute. And the second was when I crossed the finish line, I didn't even look at my watch at first because I didn't feel like I'd pushed myself. That mentality Ben was talking about. I was like, I basically not cruised around, but like, I didn't feel like I tried that hard. So I thought, there's no way I've ran faster. I thought I'd done like a 22-minute 5K or something. And when I looked at my watch and I was like, what? I've just ran faster and I don't feel as tired. And I was like, there is something in this from a performance perspective. And I wish I knew this when I played rugby. And that's then where I started to reach out with a few guys that were young when I was finishing, and just said, look, I know this breathing thing probably is going to sound a bit weird, but like, you remember me when I played, like I'm a stand-up guy, like I'm not bullshitting you. This stuff works. And I wish I knew it. Like, can I let's just do a session. Let me just show you some stuff and you can try it out and see what you think. And it just started from there. And wow. Now it's a case of like, well, as an S&C coach, we don't get education in breathing, how you breathe during like aerobic sessions, how you breathe during anaerobic sessions, how you breathe to recover during those sessions, how you breathe. Your diaphragm's like an enormous muscle, and it's there for breathing, but also like stabilization of your core. We don't teach breathing mechanics that need to go hand in hand with our core stability work. For me, breathing's become this thing that underpins everything else. And the reality was, I don't think I was that good an S&C coach. As like an actual just out and out S&C, like I didn't have enough experience. So I sort of just binned that off and went like, I'll do all the stuff that I think is more important before that. Let good S&C coaches take care of the S&C. I'll do the breathing bit that everyone else is missing. I missed, we all missed it. It just wasn't a thing.
That's really humble. I love that. That's really insightful. I'd love to find out more, and everybody listening will as well, Jacko. Is there something you can tell guys listening now? We've got aspiring players, coaches, but also everybody else who's listening who just wants to level up with whatever they're doing, whether they're aspirational athlete or they're just busy working and they want to maximize their performance and fulfill their potential. Is there anything you can, tell us now?
Of course.
I know, and stuff we can get out there.
Yeah, so there's some really simple things we can start to be aware of, and awareness is the most important thing. I've got a free foundations course on my website that goes into way more detail of these things, and it's totally free. So there's let's start with like the two main things. You're always breathing, right? You've got how you're breathing when you're not playing rugby and training, and then you've got how you're breathing when you are actually training. You want to lay a good foundation when you're not playing or training so that your baseline is starting from a better place. That's sort of fairly obvious, but we don't think about breathing like that way. I approach breathing like an S&C coach. Yeah. If you move like shit without a barbell on your back, it's just gonna make it worse when I add load to it. It's true though, right? Now,
Yeah, 100%.
so with breathing,
Yeah,
if you breathe poorly at rest, but you're unaware of it, you take those poor breathing patterns and you're just going to get stressed during training by the physical exertion, and you're just going to get better at your compensatory breathing patterns. Yeah, the same way if I load your poor lunge pattern, you're going to get stronger at a poor lunge pattern, which eventually is going to restrict you and may or may not lead to injury at some point. So our basics at rest, think about, and this was useful from a mental and nervous system perspective to help with like recovery, calm breathing, calm nervous system. So what does calm breathing look like at rest? As you both are now, it means mouth is closed, breathing is quiet, and it's coming in and out of the nose. We want it to be diaphragmatic, which means it's coming from low down, but it doesn't need to be big. It just needs to match your metabolic demands. Meaning, at rest, your metabolic demand is very low, so you don't need to breathe a lot. You don't need to breathe hard. There's a lot of misconceptions. People think a deep breath means... Now, that was deep and big, and it was very wasteful. I spent a lot of energy on making all that noise and lifting that rib cage up, but I did activate from my diaphragm. So relative to what you're doing, which then lets us transition the conversation into like during exercise, you're going to then need to breathe bigger. It wants to be activated from your diaphragm. And we want to be able to control the speed of our breathing by increasing the size of the breath. This is something that elite runners do naturally, and why they can, you watch an elite runner run like a close to 2-hour marathon, which is faster pace than you can run for probably 10 meters. And I'm not joking. You couldn't run 100 meters as fast as they run their entire marathon. It's that fast. And watch them breathing. Do they look in control of their breathing? They look like they're having a flipping picnic. It looks like an absolute piece of cake. They're not. Because when you've lost control of the rate and speed of your breathing, all of your other physiological things go out the psychological and physiological go out the park. So you cannot meet your metabolic demands through just increasing the speed of your breathing. You have to be able to expand the rib cage and get the diaphragm moving. Now, in order to expand, I'm going to give you a little detail. In order to expand the rib cage, guess what? The rib cage has got to move. Guess who's not good at moving their rib cage? Tight rugby players. Why are tight rugby players not good at moving their rib cage? Where do your ribs? Who's got, the kids song? Your rib bones connected to your backbone, right? Your ribs connecting to your spine. When you're getting smashed all the time, because that's the nature of the contact sport, we get very tight through the thoracic. That can actually cause a lot of issues higher up the chain and lower up the chain as well. But it definitely impacts your breathing because your ribs connect into your thoracic spine. If your ribs can't move, your spine can't move. But if your ribs can't move, it's very hard for you to diaphragmatically breathe efficiently. So what type of breathing pattern do we see with someone with a tight, jacked up rib cage? They're going to have a tight, jacked up diaphragm. So we'll breathe more here. When you're breathing into the upper portion of your lungs, there's a less density of the little air sacs where the diffusion takes place, the little alveoli. If you think of your lungs, like you got big pipe, branches off into two smaller pipes, then lots of little pipes. And then they get these little air sacs at the end, the alveoli. Think of that as like an upside down tree. That's what your lungs like. The stuff's got to get to the air sacs. If you've got less of them up here, you've got to do more breathing to actually create the same amount of oxygenation. That means it's less efficient. You spend about between 15 and 30% of your energy consumption on the act of breathing. The worse you are at breathing, the more oxygen and energy you spend on breathing. One of the things I do with guys and girls that I work with from a performance perspective is make your breathing more efficient so you don't have to do it as much. And then guess what? You're more in control of it when it starts to become a bit of a problem. So the things that people report back is like, I recover faster, but importantly, when I'm feeling like totally blown out of my arse and we're coming into that huddle to take our 3 breaths together, I can get myself regulated by the time I get to the huddle. So I've got some players where I work with one-on-one and the rest of the team don't do any work on it. They come to their huddle and they take their breaths, and like everyone they're looking around and everyone's like still panting and struggling to take those breaths, whereas they've regulated themselves, they've got a bit better in control of their breathing, and they take their 2 or 3 whatever number of breaths they do. They can then take quality breaths there that's going to have a different impact on the brain and the nervous system compared to a rushed, shallow chest, mouth, uncontrolled. So one of the things with the taking breaths in the huddles that a lot of people are doing is we're trying to achieve something, but we're not giving them the tools to achieve the thing they're trying to set out to do.
No, Jaco.
Sorry, that was just a big blurb.
No, that's brilliant
good.
because I have a great question, because we all know this. Forwards are the most hardworking rugby players on the field, but don't always get the recognition. The backs score the tries and they get the goals, and we're always the greatest wingman, the forwards, unfortunately. But from a selfish point of view, I would like to know, how can forwards, you mentioned now working on your breathing when you're resting, when you're not in effort, what can I do to develop their being more conscious of their breathing and optimize their breathing? Because we know a front row player or a forward player, you got mauls, you got rucks, you got scrums. And often, I always say, you get props. They go into what we call ghost mode. So ghost mode for our audience is when you're seeing dead relatives on the field and you have no idea where you are. So you're like you just mentioned, and you do the famous, the Kit Kat move, you take a break, you take a Kit Kat, you go on one knee, you're faking an injury. So could you maybe elaborate? I know you got the free foundation courses. We definitely will put that link in our show notes for our audience and the rugby players listening. But if you can maybe elaborate, how can you develop that ability to optimize your breathing when you're actually on the field? So what do they need to do? Is there maybe a tool or resource you can share with us?
Yes, there is, and more than that, and I'll share that. I just want to preempt it with you got to do your homework. Basically, I'm going to give you a hack, but you got to do your homework away from match day. Meaning, yes, you set your foundation when you're not at training, but then you practice your breath control in training, practicing that away from a skill session, because you don't really think about breathing when you're playing rugby. So I can think about breathing anytime we've got a water break. I can use some of these things. In the gym is a controlled environment, but I'm stressing the system. Great opportunity to work on the mechanics and control of your breath. Yeah. Now, one of the big drivers that are going to regulate our breathing, so different receptors that we have. We have receptors for CO2. When CO2 is really high, your body's trying to get rid of it. Yeah. When you're panting and breathing like that, as you were describing our beautiful prop, what is your brain trying to get you to do? What's your brain trying to get you to do at that point?
Get rid of that CO2.
Yes. But even more so, when you're blowing out of your ass, what do you want to do? Go on.
Feel normal.
Survive.
Yeah.
You're trying to get to the next moment and survive. Yeah. It's like fight or flight, like you said.
Go for it's a really important point. So I'm going to deliberate. I'm not going to give you the answer.
Yeah.
I'm going to dominate the next scrum.
Wow.
Not yet.
But
not yet. You're trying to.
What do you really want to do? Be honest. What do you really want to do? You're absolutely blowing out of your ass.
You want to, curl up and die. You want to sort of just hide. Or
lie down.
You want to lie down. You want to go home. Right. Yeah. You want to lie down because when you're lying down, it's easier for your diaphragm to breathe. This is an important point. Your diaphragm has to stabilize you. So when you're lying down, it doesn't have to stabilize you. Breathing is easier. One reason why you want to lie down. You want to lie down and stop, because when you're panting, your breathing is totally out of control. Your body doesn't want you to recover quickly so you can go and stress it again. We have to understand like that stress response in its most primitive nature. So allowing your auto to just take over isn't going to help you recover optimally. Fast breathing, heart rate stays high. Slower, controlled breathing starts to bring your heart rate down. Yeah, your heart rate is a key performance metric for recovery. So these two things, the carbon dioxide, we have receptors, chemoreceptors, sensitive to levels of carbon dioxide. And when it gets too high, your body wants you to stop, but you'll like go to that like fast panting, which isn't as efficient as like the depth of breath and the size of breathing. Yeah. The other link to the size of breath is the receptors, stretch receptors or mechanoreceptors that you have in your lungs, your rib cage, and your diaphragm. When you can activate those by being able to take a larger, deeper breath rather than a shallow, fast breath, you start to change the signaling back to the brain. And it's twofold. When I can create a good, I've worked on the mobility of my rib cage and the activation of my diaphragm as part of my homework. So I can expand the lower portion of my rib cage, get my diaphragm pulling air low down, deep, where I've got a greater density of alveoli, those air sacs, and more blood because of gravity. I can create a larger breath that sends a signal through these stretch receptors to my brain of like almost like satisfaction in like inhalation, as well as clearing carbon dioxide at a more efficient rate. So the chemoreceptors that are like going overdrive because CO2 is so high, they can start to control down. Now our homework is work on mobilizing the rib cage, work on your diaphragmatic breathing, and practicing the control of your breathing rate through the size of breath that you take with the depth. The other then is you can train your CO2, I don't know if numbers on, I'm on like 4, your CO2 tolerance. The numbers are irrelevant, it doesn't matter. But you can train your brain to be more tolerant of higher levels of carbon dioxide. Yeah, you can do that in your homework. Okay. And then on the field, though, we take that knowledge and go, okay, as well as doing my homework, my little hack is I need to dump off this excessive CO2 and get back in control of my breathing rate. So that would look like I'm going to use the mouth rather than fast panting and getting rid of smaller amounts for a longer period of time. I'm going to blast some out for a few reps so that then I can go back to, right, I got to create this stretch and depth of breath. I might have to use my mouth, but at some point I'm going to try and get myself back to a regulated nasal breath if I have time in the stoppage of play. If not, then I'm mouth breathing, but I'm regulating the speed and I'm making sure that it's coming from depth with my diaphragm. That's the hack. That's my
awesome.
best stuff.
Oh man, but, we can go on and on.
Yeah, wait. It comes with a warning. If every time you're feeling out of breath, it comes with 2 warnings. Every time you're feeling out of breath, if you dump CO2, guess what? You're not building up your tolerance to it. The other thing is your rib cage is all jacked up and tight. You can't expand it, but guess what? You also can't drive the ribs down and in to get the air out. So me demonstrating some powerful like CO2 dumps, as we call them, like driving air out of the mouth, like I can do that effectively because my ribs will come down and in, and you'll see my 6-pack light up because it takes a lot of muscular strength to drive those ribs down and in, particularly from our obliques, which are weak, and the lower ribs are tight. They're tight from going out, but they're also tight from coming down and in. A lot of power athletes, a lot of posterior chain work, so stuff happening at the back, leaves us in some like open, extended positions of the ribs at the front. Those athletes really find it hard to exhale. And I say like, right, I've got a drill for an exercise for the practice. Right, are you going to get in this low floor bridge and you're going to drive the air out of your mouth as hard as you can like this when I demonstrate? And then they do it, and they're bigger, stronger than me. They're some of the best rugby players in the world. And their first time they try and exhale as hard as they can, it's like, I'm like, you look like a 6-year-old baby girl. Like, what's the matter with your exhale? But it's my one and only chance to feel better than them. It's the only thing I'm better than them. But as in, it's a bit of a light bulb moment to them going, shit, like, if I'm so strong at everything, apart from this one thing, like, I need to upgrade this. And it's twofold. There's a tightness issue and then there's a weakness issue. And we address both with breathing.
No, great. Wow. That's a lot of information.
Honestly,
it's really interesting. I wish I knew these things when I was playing, and I could have avoided a few ghost mode moments. And, it's brilliant. I just want to accelerate a bit to the event that you did 2 years ago. And it intrigues me because you did an ultra marathon. It was 216 kilometers. I'm still trying to bring my 10K down, less than an hour. But now I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to focus on my breathing.
Yeah, you do it easy.
I'll get there. But what interests me, what I read up, and you correct me, you did that purely with nasal breathing, if I'm not mistaken, the 216 kilometers.
Apart from when I was crying. Because when you're crying, your nose blocks up. And there's a few reasons why I was crying.
So for me, that takes massive resilience, to run that. I'm a big fan of David Goggins, the way he's approached. Obviously, it's not for everybody, the whole David Goggins mindset, but take us through that journey, running that 216 kilometers. What are you actually experiencing? I remember seeing something on social media once. A woman was running and the camera was following. They said, "Don't take a photo of my ass." She shat herself.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes, I've seen that as well.
So if you're going to take us through the nasal breathing and just what you experienced during that ultra marathon.
Yeah. Very quickly, just on David Goggins, I was not a fan of him originally because I think it's unfair on him when we say, I understand, because I was one of the people that didn't like, he was not for me at the start. But why wasn't he not for me? Because I listened to just one little thing of him going like, fucking blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh gosh, that's not for me. But actually, if you listen to his whole message, his message is for everyone. His message is phenomenal. But it's only not for me when I'm only listening to half his message and then I dismiss him. And that's not fair, because I'm not actually, if you're going to dismiss him, listen to everything he's got to say. And then anyway, this was called, I ran my first marathon in 2021 and I couldn't move after it. And the next day I was absolutely fucked. And I remember thinking, people run multiple marathons day after day after day when they do some of these crazy ultra things. I was like, I can't walk. And it just blew my mind. Now, it doesn't necessarily make that much sense when I say it out loud, but that was the reason why that made me sign up for a 3-day event. I was like, the fact that other people are doing this, I want to experience that. Because that one thing I'm a big believer in is, like, if someone else has done it, and that person is another human being on this planet, like, you can do it. You just have to do the work to be able to get to it. So I was like, people, it wasn't like one person does it, like flipping loads of people do this. Like, even though right now I feel like this is totally impossible, and I love doing things that feel impossible. Let's work out how to do this. So my biggest mistake with it was, and this is what's difficult, the first time you do something, you don't know if you've done enough preparation. I remember the day before, I'm getting loads of messages from people and mates going like, oh, you're going to smash it. You've been training so hard. And I was like, you haven't been on a single run with me. You've got no fucking idea whether I've done enough training or not. And I don't know if I've done enough training or not. I'm doing what I think I need to do. Turns out it was nowhere near enough. I wake up on day 3. Day 1 was the most I've ever ran. That's a mistake. You do not want to do a PB on day 1. Day 2 was 111 kilometers and took 17 hours, 45 minutes.
Wow.
Cut off was 18 hours, so it came in just on time. Now, you think that night you're going to sleep quite well, aren't you? Because you're absolutely knackered. No. When you've stressed your nervous system that much, you're lying in bed going like pleading with your body, like, please, let's just fucking go to sleep now. Like, we're done. Let's go to sleep. And your brain's going like, well, hold on a minute. I thought we were running. I'm just going to stay in like this. You've been messing, like, your brain's like, you've been messing with me all day. I've told us to stop multiple times during these last 17 hours, 45 minutes, and you just kept me going. So I'm not going to like switch off in case you make us go again. So if I lie in bed for 3 hours and then you have to get up again, but I didn't even fall asleep, maybe fell asleep for 15 minutes. Alarm goes off and I literally cannot get out of bed. I turn to my wife and I'm like, I can't do this. She's like, you're doing it. And I was thinking, hold on a minute. She's normally a bit like, since my brain injury, it's been very much like, we need to be not pushing the envelope here with you and your health because like, but her thing was like, if you stop now, you're going to want to fucking come back next year and I ain't coming back next year. So she basically kicks me out of bed. We're at my sister's house. I go into the toilet. I got my trousers, my pants down my ankles. I'm sat on the toilet, crying my eyes out. Because I'm like, I not only did I not feel like I could do it, I actually was back to that place. I was a bit worried, like, this might be bad for my health. My sister comes downstairs to basically go, oh, good luck for the final day, thinking that I would be all right. And I'm like crying and I'm like, Susie, I mean, when I think back to it, like I'm literally like pants down my ankles, like talking to my little sister. I'm crying. I lift my head up and I like go, I can't do it. And she said, just try and get in the car. That's the first step. And I'm like, okay, I'll try and get in the car. Because it was actually, I don't know if she did it on necessarily thought it through and did it on purpose, but it was genius. Because getting in the car wasn't asking me to finish it. It wasn't even asking me to start. It was just like, can you get in the car? I then get in the car. My wife and her sister then, so sister's driving us. My wife, literally, she gets in the car. She's like, do you want your shoes, Dave? Like, I just got in the car. Didn't have my shoes, didn't have my backpack, my drink and food. So my wife gets all this stuff together for me. My left foot was so swollen, I couldn't even get my shoe on. We get there to the race briefing for like the start of day 3. I'm sat in the corner still just literally just crying my eyes out. By this point, 50% of the people that started on day 1 have gone. They haven't made the checkpoints. So we're cutting off. And then the guy during the race briefing goes, I'll never forget this. He was like, statistically, over the years, if you make it to the start of day 3, you're going to make it. It's like 98% of people make it if you've got this far. So maybe 1, 2, or 3 won't today, but everyone else is. And I'm imagining, no one said this, but I was thinking like he must be looking at me and like everyone else just stood up, like chatting and stuff. They're like, and someone going like, well, that guy won't, like pointing to me in the corner. The guy in the corner crying, we ain't going to make it. We set off and I'm just like walking or hobbling, and my wife is walking with me. We've got a video on YouTube. That one of the things that was depressing for me was I got 2 videographers to come and film it because in my mind beforehand it was like, oh, this is going to be this wicked thing. Then the start of that day 3, I'm like going, you're such an idiot. Like, how humiliating. Like, not only are you so stupid that you try to do something that's too hard for you and you haven't trained hard enough for, you've invited 2 videographers along, got 2 companies to pay for that, to sponsor it. And what's the documentary going to be? Oh, Jaco did 2 of the days and then pulled out. Like, there is no... So I was hating on myself at this point. We walk out, everyone else runs off, and we're just walking. And I was like, I sort of got myself to the point, I was like, okay, so we've started. I'll just walk it. I'll miss the first checkpoint and I'll just walk the rest of it. Fine. After walking for a few kilometers, it was just so painful. I was like, I can't fucking just walk the rest of this. So I just tried to start jogging and did like a pathetic, like, you know, I was still going at walking pace, but some sort of like jogging motion. Anyway, like, just, I don't know how, I can't explain how it happened, but like, gradually I'm like moving and stuff starts feeling a bit better. And I remember my wife was ahead of me. And I was like, Catherine, I was like, I'm fucking running. Like, I was actually like moving. She was like, well, good one. Like, let's hurry up because the checkout, the checkpoint's in, blah, 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 whatever. So I start moving. I'm like, surprised how we're doing. Then we look up and then there was like 3 people ahead, like, the people that were at the back, but like 3 of them had started walking up this like next hill along the coastal path. And I shouted to Catherine, I was like, let's catch those fucking walkers. I was all like pumped up at this point. So we catch them and overtake them, make the checkpoint, the first checkpoint by, I don't know, like a minute or whatever it was, like just make the first checkpoint. That was the best feeling ever. Sausage and bacon sandwiches. Like, do you want sausage or bacon? Both. Do you want red or brown sauce? Both. I was like, I'm having it all. And somehow went on and managed to complete the rest of it. 3 people didn't make it that day to the end, and that was the 3 people we took over.
Wow.
And the nasal breathing is about not making it harder, making it manageable. Like, it's regulating the speed of your breathing. It's regulating your nervous system. I just not done enough homework, enough practice. Like, I should be able to, and I can give you an example. I should be able to breathe in a way that I'm staying regulated enough that I can down-regulate in the evening and go to sleep if I'm in control. But my level of stress was so high. But comparatively, last year, I did a Snowdon 24 event where you run up and down Whitford, the highest mountain in England, Wales, as many times as you can in 24 hours. So I did 8 reps up and down, came 9th overall, which was 8,000 meters of elevation and 80 miles, so 130 kilometers in 24 hours. I was wasn't able to nasal breathe all the way up on everything, but I was regular breathing, and then nasal breathing I'm regular on the way down. So by the time I got down to the bottom, I'm literally feeling like I've recovered and I'm good to go again. Like, I took what I didn't do, and I trained hard and done my homework. I took what I didn't do in that first one. It basically was a failure. I mean, people are like, "Oh, you completed it. You didn't fail." I was like, "Yeah." In terms of I failed it in terms of what I was setting out to achieve, but I learned from it, put it in place 2 years later, and I'm cooking up something for 2026 that's going to blow some people's minds.
Can't wait for that. All right, Ben, you need to take us over. We ran out of time.
Yeah, Jaco, there's so much. It's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And I love the talking about getting outside your comfort zone as well. And we could we'd love to find out more about that in due course, and, you know, about the book as well. But we've unfortunately run out of time. But our final question to everybody always is, if there's one big rugby lesson that you've taken out of rugby that you use in your life, what would that be nowadays?
I think that one of the great things about rugby is that you can't do it on your own. It's a team sport, and we all rely on each other. I got to do my job, and people are relying on me to do my job, and I've got to rely on other people to do their job. And I'm a piece of that puzzle. What I've taken from, like, particularly for these like running endurance events, like it's an individual event, but actually, like, it's the people that you can build around you to support you that, like, get you to the finish line. And, like, being Gurthro mentioned before about vulnerability, being vulnerable to put yourself out there, but with the support of a team around you, like, then we can achieve great things, way more than you think you can achieve.
That's awesome. Love that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jaco. Thanks for taking the time. And my apologies. I need to run off.
Apologies.
An appointment after that. Listen, it was very insightful, and, you know, really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to taking more time. I saw you got a great YouTube channel and you're sharing great stuff on social media, and that's amazing. So we're going to continue. We'll put some of the links in there, and thanks for sharing your passion and your energy with us. There was loads of lessons in there. I made quite a few notes down here. I'm definitely going to roll in that free course and definitely explore more with you. So thanks for taking the time, for joining us, and to all our listeners and viewers, please make sure you like and subscribe and follow our podcast to help us grow it, so we can continue to have unbelievable guests like Jaco today. And once again, man, it's been inspiring and really enjoyed listening to you. Thanks for joining us.
Right, pleasure's all mine.